Thanks, James. Yeah, everyone who's joined in, thank you for attending. So today we hope to have a very interesting panel discussion on future-proof App Store marketing. As you know, myself, Julius, I'm a sales and partnership manager for Jellyfish, a global marketing agency, and I've got some fantastic panelists with me today. So I'll let Paul start off with the introduction to himself.
Yeah, good afternoon all. So I'm Paul Davey from Auto Trader here in the UK. Joined the business last January before the world completely turned upside down. So it's certainly been an interesting 12 months to say the least. And I look after the mobile marketing aspects of the business. So pretty broad role looking across both acquisition, engagement and retention, but critically App Store optimization.
Yeah. Tamara?
Hi there, my name's Tamara. I'm really excited to be here. It's my first time on a panel. So I've been in SEO for over 6 years and I've been working at IG. I specialise in on-page SEO strategy, but in the last 6 months, I've moved into ASO, working with Jellyfish, the agency, to improve our ASO strategies in line with our paid App Store activity. And yeah, it's enjoyable so far.
And Dimitris?
Hi everyone, I'm Dimitris. During the last 6 months, I have been leading SEO and ASO efforts for the Peanut app. And before that, I was doing the same for almost a year for Revolut.
Thank you so much. So I guess to sort of warm everyone up, I'm going to ask a very broad question, but it's obviously going to be app related. So in the last sort of 12 months, obviously we've all been in the same situation with lockdowns and things like that. What apps would you say you've used the most? And I'll start with Paul before I go into my work.
Yeah, no worries. So I don't think it will be a huge surprise that obviously with the pandemic and not being able to kind of get outside as much and go to the gym, you know, I have adopted a bit of a fitness trend app. So I made the decision to go with Swift, and I bought a turbo trainer. So for me, that's been it's been a really kind of fun, engaging app just to kind of learn about kind of indoor cycling. I think it's a great experience for anyone who hasn't kind of ever seen kind of Swift. It's very fun. It's very competitive if you want to take it that way as well. So yeah, and I definitely say I think it's kind of helped a little bit with my fitness, maybe not as much as I would like, but I think yeah, really had a lot of fun kind of playing with Swift over the last kind of 12 months.
Yeah. And an investment worthwhile then.
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant. And Tamara, how about yourself?
I would definitely say there's been a number of apps actually that I've started using a lot more over the past year. I do think actually the main one that I really love is Readly, and it's got access to over 100 magazines on there. I'm quite an avid magazine person, and I never thought I'd be a convert to reading them online, but it is such a really good app. It's very seamless. It's really easy to access them anywhere on the go, as you should be able to. So I really highly recommend it actually. It's a very good app.
Definitely. And Dimitris?
Well, I'll do the surprise. Like I'm following the trend, so I have been using the last 6 months or so the Crypto.com app. You know, following the crypto spike and trend, the hype. So yeah, you know, there are more than one apps, but you know, if I have to choose one, I think the Crypto.com app is my choice.
That's brilliant.
The return will be, you know. We'll see how this will go, you know, in terms of the return on the investment.
I mean, on that point, I would say my app that I've used the most is YouTube. Like my consumption of content over the last 12 months has skyrocketed. But I would say the apps I've downloaded the most are finance related. So literally any app that allows you to manage your money, or apps that allow you to buy stocks and shares, for the last definitely 6 months anyway, I've definitely been using or downloading more of them for sure. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to jump into the individual questions, and I'm going to start with Paul. So of course you work for Auto Trader, which has huge brand awareness, especially in the UK. And it's interesting to see how the App Store marketing aspect of your marketing fits in with the business, and also how important are Auto Traders seeing it as a channel to acquire new users.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I think first and foremost, it is a fundamentally kind of crucial app marketing channel for Auto Trader as a brand. It very much is the gateway through which all of our app stores are generated. And we as a brand, we invest a lot of time and effort in continuously looking to kind of optimize the App Store content. As it stands today, we currently do that in-house, and we use a platform called AppTweak that many people may have heard to kind of help us do that. And of course, we are very fortunate to have an extremely kind of trusted brand in the UK marketplace, being kind of the number one kind of car marketplace. So absolutely, that very much kind of helps in our ability to kind of convert users who are browsing the App Store, landing on the App Store page, and obviously driving them through to kind of app install. But I think if particularly if I think about the two areas that we spend most of our time kind of looking in the App Store, it's particularly thinking about the visibility. I think for anyone who's kind of in the industry, they know that kind of at least 50% of kind of organic App Store installs come from kind of discovery. So I work, pretty aggressively at kind of understanding how can I influence the visibility of our app. What kind of keywords can I kind of target to improve that kind of discovery aspect? And I think particularly if you think about the last 12 months and what's happened to the App Store, there's been huge booms in a number of kind of categories. There's been lots of kind of new entrants into the marketplace. So it has become pretty competitive, but you also have to think about with that, some of those new entrants comes a lot of opportunity. So, we've particularly been looking at ways and means we can target some of those new kind of keywords to aid that visibility aspect.
Yeah.
And then secondly, I guess conversion is the big opportunity as well. Ensuring that anyone who lands on your App Store page obviously goes on to deliver that install is crucial. And we've worked very hard at optimizing, particularly the screenshots, the visual appeal. I guess, we talked about kind of the gateway of kind of all app installs coming through ASO. If you're running really aggressive kind of paid advertising activity, as we do across, paid social, Facebook and Snapchat, ensuring that there is a connection between the messaging is again, can only lead on to kind of better conversion rates. So, there's nothing worse than having a great advertising campaign, but when they then land on the App Store, they're seeing a completely different kind of messaging and proposition to what you kind of started out with. So again, it just disrupts that ability to be able to convert that user. So we've worked very hard over the last 12 months to kind of improve that. We've had some fantastic wins in terms of visibility, the number of keywords that we start to rank for successfully. And we've also seen our conversion rates more than double across Android and iOS. What has been particularly challenging, though, is trying to understand the impact of the pandemic here and lockdown, because obviously that has been incredibly influential, particularly from an organic perspective. So, results have been really good, but obviously it's not always easy to determine exactly what single element is driving the behavior there. But crucially, it is very important for Auto Trader.
And just sort of to go on to that, so I guess with your sort of retention strategy or your approach, your strategic approach to acquiring users, I guess yours is a bit different from, say, an IG, where IG needs to sort of retain that customer, whereas for you, it's generating that lead so that they go to buy a car and then you sort of lose them for the next year to 2 years. Do you think there's a big difference in the way that you attract those users?
Yeah, I think you're right there. I mean, clearly the car buying journey is not something that you're doing on a weekly basis. You're in market for perhaps 2 to 3 months, obviously prepared to do that research and then go on and hopefully purchase that car. But after that 3-month window, realistically, it's going to be at least 18 months, 2 to 3 years before you're then back into the market to kind of obviously look for your new vehicle. So I think, again, we leverage the brand quite heavily in terms of obviously some of the ASO activity we do, because again, it's a tried and trusted brand. So making sure that we've got good traction in terms of our brand and leveraging some of our number one market position across some of the ASO activity, I think is also pretty crucial in ensuring that existing user comes back when they're back in market 18 months, 2 years down the line.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. Thanks for that. Now, tomorrow I was to ask a little bit about stocks and trading apps. So as of late, there's been a huge amount of interest in trading apps, whether that's be Robinhood or any other apps that are similar. How important would you say it is for these apps to educate their users on the risks and rewards associated with trading on the stock market?
It's a really good question, and I do want to start kind of by addressing increase in demand for trading apps. And actually, I read a report the other day that said that in the past year, stock market participation on mobile has increased 55% year on year, which really just shows. But also for IG and the app stores in particular, we have seen quite a lot of activity, especially around key points over the past year. So at the beginning of 2020, when COVID-19 hit, all the financial markets, volatility obviously increased quite a lot then. We saw store views, impressions, installs increase over quite a short period of time. And then again, more recently in early 2021, with the meme stock volatility as well, putting increasing pressure on our mobile platform as more people are trying to access the markets to capitalize on what's going on. And this does really highlight just how important it is to educate users on those risks, but also the rewards as well. I mean, statistically, there is a much higher chance of making a loss when trading versus making a profit, especially if you maybe don't have the same, the required knowledge and experience to manage your risk effectively. And actually for IG, the way that we've always the way that we've always led with our marketing strategies is aligning with our core values, one of them being to champion the client. And that is very much about empowering our users to understand what those risks are, making really good decisions so they can be successful in the long term. After all, that is what we want from them as well. And in line with that as well, we also consider FCA, for example, in the UK, a really core external stakeholder. And what that does mean is that often we do find we are seeing a tension between what our commercial goals are and what we want to market and how we want to do that in the app stores versus what our responsibility is in terms of educating users. And for example, in our app stores, we have to balance using those really creative, innovative ASO strategies and techniques versus using really informed messaging and very straightforward product promotion activities. Key examples of that are we make sure we only target specific keywords and intent which align with our core customer cohorts. For example, in the UK, cryptocurrency trading was banned for new retail traders in January, so we no longer target crypto keywords in the app stores in the UK. We also have to be really careful about the messaging around our products. We don't use product names in our titles. Our visuals, our creatives all have to have a disclaimer, and our long descriptions are, they do have a risk warning included as well, which of course may limit our marketing opportunities there. But it is of course really important to make sure that we are including all of that information so our users can be really well informed and make the best decisions for them. I think also it's really important just to note that IG does have a free education app on trading to help those beginners, but also more experienced traders to better understand the kind of markets that they would like to participate in and how to do that, managing their risk well.
Yeah, I'll definitely say IG seems to be like at the front or the spearheading, sort of not only allowing people to trade on those platforms, but also having a separate app that allows you to learn more about what you're doing, right? And also in the point with regards to the regulation, like I see IG in a similar space to maybe gambling apps, whereas gambling apps, their promotions are always much focused on winning money and having a great time, very little focused on sort of gambling awareness. Whereas I guess for trading apps, they have to be super tight on the messaging and making sure that they're in keeping with the FCA regulations and things. So it's interesting to see how different those sort of industries sort of interact with their users.
Absolutely. And I think a key thing to mention as well is that there's often, particularly a lot of people in this space and this industry will recognize is that there may sometimes be a tension between what the customer wants versus what is in their best interest. And that's a really key consideration for us at IG. And, you know, we're experiencing a surge in new traders wanting to access the market. And we're maybe having to make decisions to better manage that risk, look after our existing clients as well, and pivot our marketing strategies accordingly. And, you know, it's a trade-off in the app stores anyway. When it comes to what you can promote and when, I've realized that keyword optimization can be quite limited. You have to, you know, make a decision one time, make a decision another time. But also for us, it is about, you know, what that intent is, prioritizing specific personas, and being a leader in that space, but also just making sure you're doing it in a really compliant way that is ensuring users are best informed, really.
Yeah, definitely. So Demetrius, I'm gonna jump to you now. So you've obviously got a wealth of experience, you know, working for a very famous fintech app and now working for an equally popular health app. What would you say from your own experience the differences are in, you know, marketing apps to, you know, a very different audience?
Well, you know, there are similarities and differences as well, you know. Definitely, you know, whether you work on the fintech sector or like on the social or even, you know, in another sector, your goals are kind of the same. You want more organic visibility and, you know, better conversion rate. I think the main difference is the niche and how you handle it. There are different competitors and, you know, different user intent. And sometimes you need to, you know, revisit your ideas and research, but most of the times you do, you know, we perform A/B test experiments, which are your friend, and, you know, will help you a lot take, you know, a purely quantified decision. I think that, you know, I tend to find the competition on social media apps, you know, a bit tougher compared to the fintech sector. But at the same time, the big challenge I was facing in Revolut, and Tamara also said, is like the very strict regulations you have to tackle. They're very, very strict limitations around, you know, what you have to say, what you can say, what you can use, you know. So yeah, these are, I think, the two main differences. Competition, which is tougher on the social media apps, and the regulations on the fintech sector.
And would you say, in terms of maybe the channels that you're using outside of just, you know, ASO, so maybe like Instagram or something, are they typically different, and is the messaging different from, you know, Peanut's current messaging from what Revolut's might have been as well?
Yeah, even, you know, even if you know, try to see like the niche and the personas, like for Peanut, it's just, you know, women that either they're trying to conceive or they're pregnant or they're already mothers. While, you know, for Revolut is a bit more broad, the audience. It's not just women. Also the timing, the seasonality, like for Revolut, most of the times, weekends, we were seeing, you know, lower search visits and conversion rates because people, you know, were out doing other stuff instead of, you know, searching for a financial super app. While for Peanut, you know, weekend is probably the best time for a woman to spend some time for herself. So we see some spike that time.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to jump into more generalized questions now, and I'll ask everyone here. So of course, the topic of today's discussion is about future-proof app store marketing. What advice or tips would you give companies in making app marketing strategies in an industry or in a space that's ever changing and is extremely unpredictable? And I'll start with Paul, if that's all right.
Yeah, yeah, really good question, and I'm really conscious that, you know, I've sat on the other side of these panels and presentations, and I've always gone away with, you know, huge amounts of kind of learning that kind of to try and take that back into my own business. So I'm very keen to kind of give back a little bit. And I think probably there's 3 or 4 things that I'd certainly encourage people to kind of look at. And I think it does depend about, a little bit in terms of where you are in your App Store optimization journey, if you're brand new into it or whether you're more established. But I think if you're kind of new into ASO, it's always a little bit daunting to know where to start. It can be a little bit overwhelming, not understanding what are the keywords that I need to be looking for. So definitely, probably your starting point is definitely to look at competitor apps and understand the sort of keywords that they're ranking for. What are they doing successfully in terms of screenshots, title, subtitle? Just take a look at their app store and just, what appeals to you to start with, and also look, beyond your industry. Because personally, I don't actually think necessarily the car industry is a shining beacon for kind of app store optimization. So, be prepared to look outside of your own industry and just pull in what you think kind of works really well for you, and look at those competitive keywords, and then I think you can really start to build a starting point in terms of where you should be starting. I also think crucially, one of the things I'll hold my hand up and say that I've kind of learned in my journey of app store optimization is that things never stand still. I think I've in the past, I've definitely done a huge amount of work, delivered this great change to kind of the App Store, stood back and kind of watched the performance. And then I've kind of felt, I can kind of leave it for a few months. I don't need to be kind of worrying about it because it's kind of giving me the uplift.
Yeah. Things
change, and Apple and Google, we know, their algorithm changes, and, I've certainly seen things kind of wane without kind of having that continuous kind of change that you kind of can do. So I think that's also very crucial to kind of do. And I think the last thing is just, App Store optimization. A lot of it is obviously about driving the download, but for a lot of businesses, beyond the download is kind of very crucial to what you're trying to achieve. And we use Mobile Attribution Partner Branch. And of course, you can't get that visibility from organic traffic necessarily, but there are potentially other platforms like Apple Search Ads, where you can actually see at a keyword level, you can see potentially what kind of downstream events and conversion events are happening off the back of those keywords. So again, while Apple Search Ads and ASO and organic, are not totally apples for apples comparison, you can definitely get an indication as to the sort of impact that any keyword is having on downstream events beyond simply the install. So, if you're investing in an attribution partner, do try and tie the things together a little bit to get a deeper understanding of how people are engaging with the app further downstream.
Yeah, definitely. And then tomorrow, I'll pass the question to you. It's a bit different because obviously our companies work together. But what would you say? What advice would you give to companies that are sort of entering into the whole ASO app marketing sort of hemisphere?
I think I touched a lot upon Paul's points actually, but I think a key thing is, particularly from my point of view, like IG has a really good, strong marketing team. And one of the first things I did was talk to the teams, like the paid teams, what's going on in the app stores, what activity are you doing currently, talking to the tech team, finding out about all the kind of updates, how they work, what kind of processes there are, the teams involved in uploading the content to the app stores, just to really find out how a project would work and what that looks like, and review processes, etc. We've got quite a rigorous review process here. And I think another key takeaway for me is just, if you are using an agency, get what you can out of them. And Jellyfish, you have been really supportive, and I will grill you and I will ask so many questions. And you've been a really key source of education for me, directing me to resources, but also looking into the data a bit more, challenging assumptions, and it's been great. And I think they are my main two, just to really get a scope of what you're dealing with, what the trends are like, externally, but also internally as well.
Yeah, brilliant, thank you. And Dimitris, so what advice would you give new budding apps?
So lots of great tips already. I think my 2 cents or tips are first, frequently test everything. Even if you had, great results from an experiment you performed earlier, this doesn't mean that it would be the top performer forever. So circumstances change.
Yeah.
Also, competition is evolving. So I suggest, no one to be afraid of experiment and never stay, static. And the second is like, depending on where you offer your product, make sure you have, as many localized store listing as possible. I think this is super important. A lot of brands don't think about it. And what works for the US audience doesn't mean it should work for the UK or the French audience. So don't be afraid to localize your listings and test everything and very frequently.
Yeah, great answers. So I'm going to jump into sort of the whole debate around the changes to Apple's policies and privacy changes. And I wanted to ask, I'll start with Paul. Do you think there'll be a situation whereby companies now sort of have a new importance when it comes to organic marketing, as opposed to, where traditionally that paid acquired user has always been like a very at the forefront of any marketing strategy?
Yeah, I think we're all in it together and we're all kind of learning. And I've lost count of the number of webinars and meetings that I've kind of attended on this subject over the last kind of 6 to 8 months. So, of course, until it lands proper, nobody can show exactly what's going to happen. But I think, what does feel a degree of certainty is that there is going to be a huge amount of volatility in the marketplace, particularly when it comes to paid, particularly when it comes to kind of Facebook, Snapchat as well, which are obviously two of the platforms that we currently use. So I think, with some of those changes, I think even Facebook have said themselves that they do expect, quite a bit of volatility in terms of the performance. Naturally, I think it does mean that more people will, potentially be coming through the App Store itself. I think it will, if I take Auto Trader's perspective, so today we use quite a lot of dynamic ads in our Facebook campaigns, which obviously serve up specific car makes and models as an advert, and then obviously people are driven back through to the App Store and then deep linked onto the specific advert in the app. With the iOS 14.5 changes, that can no longer happen. So our advertising is going to be much more kind of high level. And naturally, I think that just puts more emphasis on the App Store itself. When they land on that App Store page, we need to have perhaps a stronger proposition that converts through to the App Store install itself. So I think that is definitely one aspect. I think naturally Apple, I think, want to increase the prominence of their own platforms. So again, Apple search ads and how closely aligned that is to kind of App Store optimization. Clearly, I think we will see more growth of Apple search ads. I think it will become more competitive, and therefore, again, you need to use techniques to increase the optimization and ability to convert from Apple search ads, and that kind of is hand in hand with ASO.
Yeah. And Tamara, would you say that there's been a shift maybe at IG with regards to the importance of Apple search ads or any of these other channels, and more of a focus on really tying down your organic sort of efforts to acquire more users?
I think we've got the advantage at IG that we consider all channels really closely. We take every channel as a key acquisition journey for potential clients. And certainly for ASO, this is a new start for us in this area. We're learning what we can achieve from it, what opportunities are there. And it is really exciting what we've achieved so far. Even amid the volatility, we are seeing really good results from being more targeted. I think time will tell really with the new the changes that are coming up whenever they happen, and we're certainly making strides already internally to adjust to that. And I've definitely got it on my radar to work a lot more closely with the tech and paid teams going forwards to also from an SEO point of view as well, looking at what we can do from an organic perspective to drive more acquisition through the app stores and our mobile platforms. And it is actually on our ASO strategy to target a completely different customer cohort in that way, who are using search to find those kind of channels, updating our website, promoting, targeting particular keywords a lot more effectively on our mobile training platform page. So yeah, we're looking at it a lot more holistically, indeed. Yeah.
Brilliant. And then Demetrius, would you say it's business as usual for Peanut? You know, you want to do whatever is required to get the changes and everything updated for the policy changes, or are you looking at other methods for acquiring users, i.e. organically?
I think, you know, as most of the companies, you know, we will also try to find a way to tackle this. I think the most important part is, you know, improving the search visits and the conversion rate, plus making, you know, the user onboarding easier will be even more crucial than before. And as Tamara said, I think if we think also that, you know, Google announced that they will block the third-party cookies on the upcoming months. I think creating a solid and holistic organic acquisition strategy is a must. So yeah, I'm in favor of what my two fellow panelists said.
Yeah, I think I think as someone who's in the market industry, it seems like, okay, it's more work to acquire those users, but then as a consumer of these apps, I completely understand why they're making these changes. And it will be interesting to see what sort of the adoption rate when people are pressing yes, I want to, you know, have my data tracked, or no, you know, what that looks like 12 months from now. And if it's the right decision, it'd be great to see, you know, what the outcomes of that are, for sure.
To be transparent, totally transparent to you, I think from an SEO and ASO perspective, our work would be, you know, more appreciated right now.
That's true. Yeah.
Transparent, you know.
I think so. I think ASO has always been sort of not always an afterthought, but something that it's a nice to have. Whereas I think now it's going to be a need to have sort of situation. Definitely. And then I guess more broadly speaking, apart from this, can you see anything on the horizon in terms of challenges that we might be facing going into, you know, 2021, 2022 and beyond? I'll start with Paul, if that's all right.
I think, I mean, again, ASO is obviously constantly evolving, and, you know, it's ensuring that obviously you adhere to obviously as many best practices as you possibly can do. And of course, I think particularly with, you know, the changes that we expect to see from iOS 14.5, you know, the market is going to become more competitive. And I think, interestingly, the last 12 months have absolutely been a bit of a precursor to what probably would have happened anyway. So, you know, the pandemic has absolutely accelerated the marketplace. And, you know, particularly you look in the UK, in the shopping category, which we sit in, you know, you look at many of the supermarket brands that didn't really have apps 12 months ago. You know, now they are all kind of dominating some of the, you know, the top 10 in our category. The reality is that isn't going to go away. So, you know, we have to adapt, obviously, you know, some of the competitiveness that's coming from other areas. But I think also it's important to recognize that there is opportunity from that as well. You know, if you can get on the coattails of one of those new entrants into the marketplace, and perhaps not obviously rank number one, but if you can get into, you know, the top few ranking positions organically after them, then absolutely you have every opportunity to gain a few more extra installs that weren't necessarily there 12 months ago. So I think, you know, there is, again, things will evolve. There'll always be new people entering the market, but I think you have to try and recognize the opportunities that exist with some of these players as well.
Yeah, definitely. And Tamara, what would you say, well, what would you predict could be challenges that we'll be facing in the next few years from a mobile?
I think absolutely how the trends in the external world impact the trading space, because obviously the last year, I guess a lot more people have had time for the apps. It's been a lot more adapted to their lifestyle. It will be interesting to see how that plays out, as maybe if life does get back to normal. But also with the regulatory landscape as well, and how volatility increases or you know, decreases. That will be interesting, and that will of course have a direct impact on all trading companies, particularly IG. I think for us, just a key thing is just to be adaptable and ready to pivot when we need to. and doing what we can to make sure that we are maintaining that visibility for our core terms and seeing what it brings us. Really, we're quite agile, so I'm hopeful we can take it on whatever happens.
Definitely, yeah. I think agile is the key word there for sure. And Dimitris, what would your thoughts be on this subject?
I think the most important part is, you know, to stay informed about, you know, any upcoming changes, and also develop the skill of adaptability. So, you know, have the flexibility to quickly shift, you know, your strategy based, you know, on any changes that may affect your work and your acquisition efforts. And overall, I think, you know, if you try to diversify your channels, you know, in a more broad discussion, it will help you, you know, at least be, you know, work proactively and be more prepared, you know, on any change, not specifically regarding app stores, but overall, you know, because, you know, the tech giants, you know, are owning the game and they will still be doing so in the next years.
Yeah. And you know, that's a really good segue to my next question. So, as you know, Google and Apple have a massive stranglehold on, you know, access to their app stores. I mean, can you see a case being made for governments to sort of step in a bit more and regulate what happens within those app stores, allowing it to be a bit more free and open? Or do you think it'll just be whatever Apple and Google says goes? Paul?
I mean, I'd love to see a little bit more regulation, and I think, you know, for many of us in this industry, I think we probably all face many frustrations about getting your app reviewed, particularly with Apple. I've had, you know, countless occasions when I've been rejected and not had any clue as to why it was really rejected. And, you know, again, depends on the reviewer. Sometimes you get on the day. So it does feel that they perhaps have a little bit too much control in some areas. Yeah, I mean, obviously I've read a little bit about kind of third-party app stores. I don't know if that's going to become factual or not. Yeah, I mean, obviously you can see some benefits of that, but also some of the cons of it being that obviously then if you have to manage out further app store content, it just becomes a little bit more challenging. I mean, already we've had some conversations with Huawei. You know, they do have Auto Trader on there, and again, it's a great opportunity, an expansion of kind of our app's ability to be discovered elsewhere. But it just obviously means that there needs to be a little bit more resource internally to obviously, you know, update that app store alongside kind of Android and Apple as well. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see where it goes in the next 12 to 18 months.
Definitely. And Tamara, would you say that you're in favour of governments having a bit more control or a bit more insight into what's going on within the app store market space?
Is that a question for me? Sorry.
Yes, Tamara. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think it's just going to take a lot of just being really thoughtful about everything and just planning the issues, any risks that could crop up, and just making sure we are aligning with our core values the whole way. And I'm pretty confident that whatever comes our way, we'll be able to navigate it. It's just about taking it day by day, really, and seeing what works, but also being ready to pivot.
For sure. And Dimitris, what would you say your thoughts were on that?
I think, you know, as long as this is not, you know, affecting a lot of work, I'm okay with that. You know, we never know how this goes, like even the recent things that happened in Australia with the Facebook ban. So you never know, you just need to be prepared. And this is why I mentioned before, you know, the more prepared you are, and, you know, the more diversified you have your strategy, you could be, you know, less anxious. You will be anxious, of course, but, you know, a bit less, and, you know, you won't see us at least, you know, you won't see, you know, 0 installs from day one.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I guess the last sort of question before we jump into Q&As. So there's over 5 million apps within the app stores. So unless you're a well-known business such as yourselves, it's super hard to get visibility. Now, how would you advise or give tips to new entrants into the market to acquire users in a space that's super crowded? Paul?
Yeah, so I think probably kick off with saying, again, appreciate obviously budgets are, particularly have been under pressure recently, but I think it's critical to have some sort of platform or agency in place that allows you to monitor the performance of your App Store optimization techniques. Because I think you can have the greatest technique possible, but unless you're able to kind of assess the impact of that, it's very difficult to make informed decisions going forward. And I think also something that I kind of learned relatively recently in the business is we kind of sit within the industry, and I think we have our own little bubble, and we understand, App Store optimization and all the elements that it can impact. But I think it's important to also educate those around you, that are perhaps not living and breathing mobile apps every day. Exactly, what does it all mean? Again, what are the important metrics that you take back to your kind of leadership group to kind of help them understand that actually investing more time and effort into kind of ASO is the right way to go? So again, whether that be kind of the number of keywords that you rank for, again, the number of organic installs that are being generated. I think if you can understand the sort of core health metrics that you need to take back to that leadership group, I think that stands you in better stead of being able to kind of hopefully get more resource and budget going forward.
Brilliant. And Tamara, what would you say? What advice would you give to a budding app company that's looking to obviously make its way on the App Store?
Yeah, I think a key thing to do would be definitely to start small, testing and learning. That's what we've considered to be a key. That's just kind of the language that we're using a lot. We're testing and learning, we're seeing what works and what doesn't, and then we're able to refine our strategy a lot more with every kind of every quarter, every 6 months, whenever we're seeing more results, and we've got a longer scope of time to measure those against our KPIs. And I think as well, 100% educating those around you. App stores do work very differently to SEO and paid channels, of course. So that is definitely really important. And I would say just lots of research and learning, and coming to conferences like this, really navigate, like just having a look at absolutely everything available online, talking to influencers, talking to other people about it who've worked in that space. And maybe as well, just thinking about it like a small website, how would you build a small website up? How would you build your App Store up?
Definitely, that's really good advice. And Demetrius?
Well, trying to be, 100% realistic and transparent, it's difficult. However, this is what I like about SEO and ASO. Sometimes, not all the times, David can beat Goliath. So, my advice is, creating a straightforward and solid organic acquisition strategy that combines both ASO and SEO efforts. Have clear KPIs that are measurable. Will help you, quantify every move, quantify every request you make for extra resources or budget, and it will save you a lot of time and make you more flexible on shifting, from a strategy to another. So I think overall, it's difficult, but it's not something that cannot be done. You just need to be even more, strategic and tactical.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much, guys. I think we've got a hard stop at 3 o'clock, and sorry there's no time for questions. There are a couple here, but I'll try and get them answered offline. But yeah, thank you so much, Paul, Tamara, Demetrius, for your efforts and your very deep insight into this ever-changing market. And I hope the viewers managed to get a good level of insight from all the answers that were shared. But thanks so much.
Thank you.
Everyone,
take care. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Right.